like a weird X-Men fight, and then you introduce these twins, and it's like they're out of a different anime. Like it's like they jumped out of like a shonen anime. You are listening to Alternating with Eric, episode 26. I am Connor.
And I am Eric.
And we are alternating with Eric. Actually, maybe I should. Jesus. Okay. Hi, I am Connor.
And I am Eric.
And we are Alternating with Eric podcast. We review anime and manga. So, Eric, how have you been?
I have been more or less working and relaxing this week. I managed to take a couple of days off, and in that time, I have gone off and decided to do a class of 40 kids to teach. So teaching them a bit of basic self-defense, which was hectic but a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And somehow managed to do that by myself, because trying to teach 40 kids is, that's quite something, Connor, if you've never done that before. And during training, I managed to bust up my leg. So
shit.
Well, not too badly.
Which leg?
My left one.
Oh, fine.
But basically what happened was someone kicked it in the wrong spot, and it was just like, ow. Then someone else kicked it in the same spot, and I was like, okay, what the hell? I'm having a bit of difficulty walking on that leg at the moment, but it hasn't exactly stopped me. And I've just been kind of walking around, just walking it off, making sure it's nice and nice and healed up, more or less. And I guess media-wise, I've continued to read a Chinese cultivator manga called Heresy, which is really interesting, a little bit more in-depth to all the other ones I've read, which are flashy, bright, and everyone is pretty. And this one, not so much.
Yeah.
It's all black and white. The drawing is quite unique. It just all looks great. And I've also managed to finish watching The Umbrella Academy Season 2.
And how was it?
Well, not to spoil anything for Season 2, but basically all the time travel shenanigans they've been doing, it's coming back to bite them in the ass really badly.
Yeah.
I've finished watching that, and I've started to watch Love, Death, and Robots, which I found great because I've seen a few music videos based on it. The episode I'm watching right now is Shapeshifters, and it's all about werewolves. But all the other episodes have been, they just looked awesome and fantastic. They're all a mix of real life, cartoons, CG animation.
Yeah, I saw the CG one.
Which one was that?
The one that's got the blonde chick. That's all I remember.
The blonde chick.
The blonde chick and like a army dude or something. I don't remember it that well.
Okay, the army dude is the Shapeshifters one, but the blonde chick? Oh yes, the blonde chick is the second episode. Yep. That is a terrifying episode. Very terrifying. Of course, it also has a
Are you afraid of
scene of it.
3G tits or whatever? CGI.
Well, I mean, you kind of forget about that once you reach the end of the episode, and then after that you realize what's going on.
Yeah.
I recommend watching that episode because it is just watch it. Yeah. Honestly, I might even show it to you later.
That one, and there was one. It was like Hitler or something, or was some weird sort of European animation style.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I probably haven't gone on to that one. Although, Yeah, although if we have to review this, I'd definitely tell you what my most hated episode is
Well,
so
I've
far.
got something in mind that's kind of like that, that we might
Mm,
review at some point. That's Tezuka-ish. So
I'd definitely love to do that.
yeah,
And what else? I really haven't been looking at anime and mangas too much aside from what we're reviewing today.
yeah.
And I mean, game wise, I've just been looking at some of my old random games. I've gone back to playing a Divinity series game, and also going completely back to
Mm.
doing World of Warships and War Thunder, because those are my favorites,
Yeah.
and I like to go in
Mm.
tanks, planes, and ships and just blow everybody up, which is a lot of fun. Which is actually a lot of fun.
Mm.
Yeah, what about you, Connor? What have you been up to?
So I've been busy with work this week. I had a couple more days, so I've been busy doing that. And then I recently have been, well, I'm still playing Persona 4. I know everybody's like, Persona 4 Gold, I haven't finished it yet. But
It
I
is
have work.
It is a long
I
game,
have work.
though,
It's a
isn't it?
long game, and I don't, with those games, I do just take breaks and just come back
Yeah.
to them. I don't care if it takes me like a year to finish it or a couple months.
Mm,
Like, I don't rush those games because you just get sick of it. And I don't
mm,
like, I think I've said this before, I don't really enjoy the just the grinding section of those games that
mm,
much. I enjoy more the story and in the actual battles and like the
yeah.
social thing. But like going and just grinding and grinding and grinding, I do something that would be considered taboo. I turn off the music, I put on a podcast, and I just sort of listen to that and just like sort of just do grinding, but don't really focus on it. Like just focus on something else while I'm doing it because I have to do it. Like because I think I've said this before, but I hate the grinding system. How it doesn't have like a meter that tells you when you level up. You just have to keep going. And sometimes you're in there for like almost an hour, and it's like, why the fuck haven't I leveled up all my characters? Like, maybe one person leveled up the entire time while I've done it. But there's like a lot of just like fighting, like dungeon, and then it's like nothing. And I'm
Mm,
sure someone will tell me, oh, you gotta do this, or you gotta use this, or you gotta change your strategy to this. It's like, well, I've used several different strategies, and I don't get any better results. The most
mm.
I get is like if I play for 2 or 3 hours, I get like my whole party usually pretty good.
Yeah, it's really hard to get strategies like that around. It's definitely much easier in maybe some games like the Final Fantasy
Yeah.
series.
Well, I find Pokemon has like the perfect level up system. It's just
Mm,
so easy to figure out. It's
yeah.
just like I have a meter and it tells me, and if I do a certain attack, it'll tell me, and if I do this certain attack, then it'll take down
Hmm.
this. It'll do more of this.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah, yeah,
get and it's just easier. Like
definitely. I obviously haven't played Pokemon, but I've played a lot of JRPGs and just
you've played
RPGs in
Pokemon, haven't
general.
you?
Yeah, huh?
I thought you'd played one of the Pokemons at
I've
least.
never played any of the Pokemon
Really?
games. I have never once.
Jesus. Okay, I might have to add that to our Let's Play bloody list. Because by the way, we're gonna start doing some Let's Plays and some
Yeah,
audio commentaries.
I mean, we can, just letting you know, I'm probably not going to be that interested in Pokemon. The only
You don't
thing
want
I
to be
was...
the very best, like no one ever was.
No, I don't. No, I've gone through a lot of JRPGs and
Yeah.
RPGs in general, and they all do still have that sort of Pokemon style leveling up system.
Yeah.
It varies
Well,
from game
Final
to game,
Fantasy
but
1 and 2, I kind of like the Pokemon system.
yeah,
Because,
that's definitely the case.
yeah,
And then they seem to be, you
they
know,
changed it up after, I think.
yeah, a
When they
bit,
got to 3D games, I think they changed it up.
yeah, something like. Although Final Fantasy 13 is.
Completely different from
Oh,
other
I
games.
don't know what it is. I played it and I just thought this seems more like a mobile game than anything else.
Yeah.
The style of it.
So yeah, I've been playing those. I downloaded, but I haven't started Zero Dilemma. It's part of the 9 series, which is what the guy who wrote Danganronpa did these games as well.
Mm,
And 9's like the first. It's on a boat. It's like a puzzle trap game. I find them kind of fun, even though I'm shitty at maths. So I do tend to play them with like a walkthrough, but I still find them fun. People would say like that's cheating and you're like taking all the experience out of playing with a walkthrough,
mm.
but well, I either play with a walkthrough or I play with a calculator, so I can actually do the puzzles because I am like maths dyslexic. So yeah, some of those puzzles aren't easy for me. But I do find those games fun, and like some of the music and stuff works on you if you play it like really late at night and stuff. So some of those games those are fun. But I've got Zero Dilemma, and I might start with that because Steam had a sale, and they were like, "Oh, it's like $10 now or whatever." And I think the first game's 20 or something like that. Like it's pretty cheap. So I've been playing that. Well, I'm gonna start playing that soon. And I'm still watching Uzaki-chan, the controversial anime at the moment, because there's a girl that people were like, she's got tits and she looks really young. And I'm like, yeah, okay. But like, I don't know. I just find the comedy really funny, and I couldn't really give a shit about and there are fan servicey moments, but I don't know, they don't bother me as much as some other anime shows. And I just like, I don't find them super funny. I just kind of like, and they're only here or there every now and then. They're not like the main jokes that are in the show. The main jokes in the show are like ones that I find really funny. Like I've told them already, the ones where she's like just basically annoying him, waking him up at night to like help with something when he's sick. There's some just really sweet there was like one episode that was like no ribbing, no jokes. It was just a really sweet episode about friends bonding. And I was like, oh, that's a nice episode. And then on the internet, everybody's like, fuck the show, destroy the show. And then everybody defending the show is like, we're not pedophiles, but this thing is pedophilic. And oh man, there's like a whole bloody fucking battle thing on Twitter at the moment, which, I don't know. I should just not look into them, but I kind of find it curious, and I kind of find it fun. And also, I love that I've like,
yeah.
I kind of just like observe it, like I just observe it, but I don't comment, which is probably the best thing.
Yeah, don't get involved with that. That's kind of like
I'm not gonna get involved. I'm just peacefully watching.
That's like watching a battle between two idiots. You don't want to get involved; they'll drag you down to their level.
What's funny is like I sometimes agree with one side, but then they keep on doing other things, and it's like stop doing that. It's it just gets nuts. So I'm watching that show, enjoying that, even though some people really aren't. I finally finished Doom Patrol, season
nice.
1, and I finished season 2. Man, I really hope they come back for another season. They ended on a cliffhanger, and
I'll have a go at watching Doom Patrol because it does sound.
It's good.
It sounds good.
I really enjoy it, and I'm not. I love DC, but it wasn't like my DC title. Like it wasn't like the one I expected to like. Like I like them and this Doom Patrol, and I like them in Young Justice. They have a small cameo / tribute, which is pretty funny. Like they've actually really, there's a really dark joke with them in Young Justice that I don't want to spoil. That is also kind of referencing Teen Titans Go, which is they did it with the Doom Patrol, and at first like I thought I'm gonna hate this because I don't really like Teen Titans Go. And then I saw them like do the joke and within the show's context. I was like, this is really funny and really good. And it's sad, but also funny at the same time. So I was like, oh, this is exactly what the Doom Patrol's like. And I've been watching Doom Patrol. It's been really good. It gets really fucking weird. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I want to recommend the show to a lot of people. But there's literally a scene like in the last episode I watched, and I don't want to spoil too many things, but I'm just going to say like there's a giant sentient cockroach. And then there's also a giant sentient mouse. The mouse doesn't talk. Mouse is like subtitles. But the giant cockroach has like an actual voice and talks, and people can hear it. And it's like one of the main villains at the end of the show.
Hey Connor, are you sure you weren't on drugs and you happened to see a cockroach and a mouse on your kitchen?
No.
And you thought they spoke to you? I thought that,
but it was just, yeah. Well, hey, I already mentioned like the show.
Okay, so you haven't taken any LSD?
No.
Are you sure?
No.
Because you can tell me, right? I would like some. I would like some.
No.
I would like some very much.
No. No, this maybe it was written on LSD. I don't know. It was super. Like, there's some weird moments in the show, but okay. Here's the weirdest fucking most like what the fuck am I watching? So if it's not weird enough that there's a giant fucking mouse and a giant cockroach that were introduced to the show earlier on, but like I kind of was like, wait, what the fuck?
Mm.
Like, I kept on asking, like, why am I still seeing this? And then they actually brought them in, and then, like, they make out at the end of the show, and then the characters get inside the, like, the mouse or the cockroach or something, and then it explodes or something like that, and they come out of it, and then they're, like, really small, and then somehow they become big again for the second season, and they don't really explain that. Yeah, so
What?
maybe you should watch Doom Patrol
Maybe I
and
should.
tell me if you can figure out what the fuck was going on there, because I was like really into it, paid attention, loving everything, and then that happened. I was like, what the fuck am I watching?
I'll
Because
try.
like Mr. Nobody, once you get his concept, it makes sense, and you get what's going on with him.
Mm.
But everything like that, those two things are like, what the fuck? Like even Danny Street, which is like a weird concept, which is a literal street that can talk and can interact with you, like it's like a person almost.
Oh shit! That sounds like something that's part of the SCP.
It's
files.
a Grant Morrison like it definitely is a Grant Morrison idea. It's a very like meta sort of concept, and that like that makes sense and it's a cool concept. They made it. I think it was like in the comics it was a transsexual street, and this one they made it a gender norm non-binary street or something. Yeah.
Sorry, what's the point? It's a talking street that you can interact with.
It's a street that you can only access, like certain people can access. You shouldn't be like it opens its doors for so it can hide, it can it can come about anywhere, and it's basically for like people who are outsiders of society, like people who are trans and things like that, so they can come in. And it makes sense because they also have, like, within the show, a group called the Bureau of Normacy or something. Normacy? Yeah, and they basically, like, they're basically like Area 52 if they were, like, I don't know what you'd call them. Like
Don't
the
you mean
50s,
Area 51?
Sorry, Area 51. They're like Area 51 if, like, or like the FBI.
It was in the, the Looney Tunes movie that they made the joke about how they used Area 51 as a conspiracy theory to hide the true name of the research facility that looks at aliens, which is Area 52.
No. It's Area 51. It's like it's like just basically a giant government, like underground hideout sort of organization thing that I believe they explain in the show, like in the past it used to like go and investigate like paranormal and like strange things. And strange things could be like even someone who's transgender or gay, like things that like they didn't know about or
Yep.
but back then like it was more like mythical things, like they're going exploring like a woman who's like half woman half ape sort of thing. There's things like that.
Okay.
And then halfway through they like changed their mind of what that is and became like a bureau that basically gets rid of anything that's strange or like abnormal, and that includes people who are like gay or different or that sort of thing.
Oh Jesus!
So they're basically like a 50s like like
that sounds like a euthanasia center, and that's just that's just creepy as hell. The idea of the street alone is pretty interesting. I mean, I thought at first,
I think you would like the show. There's good characters and there's good moments, but it just has a really strange ending. And season 2 is not too bad. It's more laid back, I would say, with like introducing its villain. Like it's there, but season 1, like they really try and tie the villain into a lot of their episodes, or they have like a different villain in a lot of their episodes. While season 2, like they just sort of play around with the characters a bit more. They have even some episodes where I think the villain doesn't even show up, like, and they have a lot of moments that I really like where they do like parodies of things. Like they've done a 70s style cop show.
Oh, okay.
They did like a private private like a 30s style sort of 40s sort of style TV sort of private investigator thing. There's some cool stuff going on there. So I've been watching that. I've been watching Akagi. I went back and rewatched a couple episodes of that.
Oh, nice. Is it Oh, is
It's
it
the
like the
gambling
very
show.
very? I know, but is it the very
It's
very
big nose
first?
gamblers.
Yeah. I mean, that's not exactly the worst thing to watch.
No, it's not a bad show. I watched it way back in the day,
Yeah,
and then
we used to
figured I'd
watch
give
that
it a go.
extensively at the anime club in
Oh, really?
university. Yeah, yeah, it was Akagi and the companion, the other one,
Kaiji.
Kaiji. That's the one.
Yeah,
Akagi and Kaiji. Those were the two
yeah.
ones we've watched extensively.
Well, Akagi's the mahjong one, and Kaiji's like the one that's like just general gambling.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we watched those ones. They were pretty interesting.
Yeah.
They were pretty good as well.
Yeah.
I think what is it? What was I going to say? Yeah, I think with that one, like the style of art itself is not something I pay attention to, but kind of like Kakeguri,
Yeah.
it does have its own unique take on how gambling works. And
I
Lara
like
game
it a
as
lot
well.
more than Kakeguri because I find
Kakeguri.
it a lot like it's a lot less predictable, and I don't feel like it's just trying to titillate people with like underage people. That's a show that's got a lot of underage bloody fan service.
I actually enjoyed Kakeguri for
Really?
a bit because
I thought it was
did-
was like gambling show. I thought it was like Kaiji meets prison school. Like that's the best way to describe it.
that's not the way I wanted to look at it. I kind of wanted to see where they'd go with the whole, idea of gambling,
Yeah.
and just kind of how they used gambling to kind of sort people through in a sort of, in a hierarchical sense. If you're a good gambler, you'll be able to achieve more in life. You'll know what to actually risk. You
Yeah.
know how to achieve, great benefits through risk. And then if you're not good at gambling, then you clearly are at the bottom of the barrel. You're supposed to work for the people above you,
Yeah.
In the Kakagura version, you're the pet,
Yeah.
You're
No,
someone.
I've seen the show.
You're owned by someone.
it.
So yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't. It wasn't for me. But I've been watching Kaiji. I've been enjoying that. I did watch. I've been watching Akagi, and I did think I watched a bit of Kaiji. But my comments on the art, like it's very distinct and it's very. I don't know. It's like some people would say Hajime no Ippo's art isn't very pretty, like the faces, because they're not typical anime. And they've got they've got very defined like noses and eyes and stuff. And Kaiji's the same, but Kaiji, like, everybody has, like, a, big nose or, like, a distinct nose.
And a pretty wide smile, actually.
And, yeah, I'd say most of them, like, maybe aren't...
Or like, there's a lot of teeth showing.
Yeah.
In the sense, It's like, it is a rather strange thing to see because
Yeah.
you don't often see people's teeth that much in real life. And most of the time, it's always like,
Yeah.
that kind of can see me.
I don't mind it.
Yeah.
I just find the show's, like, it's very distinct. And it's very, like, the art style is very expressive. And also the animation is really good.
If by expressive you mean basically
Like the facial features and stuff are very expressive.
Like showing pain, showing misery, showing happiness.
Like it's more mouth flaps than what I'm used to seeing like at an anime. Like definitely more there's like some more expressions than just like mouth open, mouth closed, mouth open, mouth closed. Like there's more teeth, there's more other things coming into it, like people gritting their teeth a bit more. I don't know, there's just like because we tried so last show we've recorded some audio commentaries that we're going to put out at some point. We're having them in, like sort of in the back catalog, but we'll bring them out. But we did like one for Baki the Grappler, the original Baki, and Eric didn't seem to mind the show. I am now starting to realize why I didn't quite watch it as much, because I do think like the art for that and the animation for that did not look very good. It looked kind of good later on. Like I remember, like by episode 20 or something, when they do like a tournament arc, the animation gets a lot better. But like I've never really liked the art in Baki too much because everybody has like crazy, impossible muscles or facial features, and everybody looks ugly. Even the chicks, I will say, in that show. Versus like Akagi and Kaiji, like they have a very distinct look.
Sorry, are we still talking about Baki or JoJo's Bizarre Adventures?
JoJo get like I don't know. I'm not gonna tackle
JoJo's
JoJo.
can get away with a lot of things.
No, I'm not gonna tackle JoJo because there is some good art in it, like with some of the characters. But I have my own opinions on like which characters I think look good and which ones don't. I don't think I have the same opinion as a lot of other people do on it. So, and that could cause some controversial opinions here. So, I'm not really gonna say anything because I don't like some of the character designs in that, but I won't say which ones. Because I can admit like that the art style is good. It's just I'm not the biggest JoJo fan out there as well. Like I read it back in the day. Because I'm a fucking hipster. Read it before it was cool, before it was popular. I read part one and all those, before they got licensed. But yeah, I'm not gonna touch that thing with a 10-foot pole because that is a massive fandom, and I don't want to get their rage. So JoJo is cool, and that's all we're gonna say about that. But we'll be right after the break. We'll be getting into the anime review, and yeah. We are back from the break, and we are reviewing this week. We're reviewing a movie called First Squad. Eric, do you want to give me the plot synopsis of First Squad?
So, First Squad is set in basically the middle of World War II in Soviet Union, and it depicts the story of a young girl who's traveling around,
It's Russia, isn't it?
It is. She's traveling around Russia.
Yeah.
And what she's doing, she's on a mission. She's on a secret mission. But unfortunately, during an accident, she received a concussion and basically forgot everything.
Yeah.
Got immediate amnesia, as most characters do.
Yeah.
So then comes a tale of us discovering that she's a seer, a person with a special ability to
see the future, doesn't she?
See the future and just see things others cannot. So essentially, she's been having a dream, which is centered around a knight who, in ancient times, almost destroyed Russia. And also practiced black magic. Yeah, there's also magic in this, which
Isn't
is
it a German
surprise.
knight or something? That's at least what I got on my subs.
I believe it was a German knight. Kind of hard to tell. Probably was something like a Germanic knight of some sort.
Something like that. It reminded me a lot of the Templars with the giant cross on it.
Yes, he might have been. Yeah. He might have actually been a Templar.
Did they have Templars in Germany?
I'm pretty sure they did.
Okay. I'm not, see, this is where you're more the history person, and I'm just sort of the, hey, that looks similar to something I
haven't
know.
touched on Templars in years. I'm going to have to look back on this.
I mean, I'm vaguely familiar that Germany has like they had like their own sort of knights and...
Oh, hell yeah.
That sort of thing. They, and you go back to like Germany and a lot of those places, they did have their own versions of Vikings as well, because... As we know, the Scandinavian Vikings basically went into everywhere and raped and pillaged, and
all the fun things.
Yeah, except for I can't remember if it's Scotland or Ireland that basically they went there and they were like, oh no, we can't fuck with these people. I don't remember which one, but it was one of those places. And
I would think it'd be Ireland.
I think it was one of those because I remember reading it, and I remember they couldn't fuck with them because their army was just really good. And then they just basically they sort of integrated with them. They didn't have to. They just sort of made a deal with them, and they just eventually just sort of molded and
Yeah.
Versus some of the other cultures Dutch and English and stuff, they just invaded and tried to take over, and somewhat succeeded and somewhat didn't in some places. But because there were definitely English Vikings, and there definitely weren't as well because you had your English knights and stuff. But Germany had their own version of this, because I remember even learning about it when I learned about World War II and Adolf Hitler, because even he, his family was taught all about Germany's great, generation of knights and things like that, and about how great they were in the war and all this before, obviously World War One and all this. That because this movie it's World War One, isn't it? It's
World War Two.
Well, it's on the edge of because I remember even on
no,
the subs mentioning
it's 1942.
Ah, okay.
1942. There was a line.
Yeah, there was a line that threw me off. That was something about.
No, it's not. It's in 1942. Pretty much because this is what if you do look carefully, you can see the uniform styles that were there. You can also see.
Oh, I definitely recognize like
the uniform worn by the
uniforms.
soldiers is World War II. The vehicles, the planes. There's the planes as well. There's the Messerschmitts, I think that's how you said. I'm sorry if I'm butchering this. Any Germans listening to this?
Yeah.
Which were the one of the common fighters used by the Germans in World War II. There's also the fact that what was it? A few things would have thrown you off, especially since they used trench lines.
Which is more World War One than World War Two. But then again, I have seen a movie called Come and See, which is all about I should know this. Is it Belarus that's near Russia?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's about, I think it was about Belarus and about the Nazis coming into there and basically killing a bunch of people in Belarus. And in that movie, I believe they had like trenches and some other things like that. So
yeah, trenches wouldn't
surprise me if they were still used a little bit even after World War II.
They were used a little bit, but it's hard to really define the differences in conventional warfare between World War One and World War Two.
I mean, World War One definitely used them a lot more. Our battles were more centered in the trenches, and I think World War Two was a bit more of everything else.
Yeah.
But yeah. Because as you can probably tell, I'm not going to get into it too much yet, but one of the problems of this movie was that it's a little bit confusing and a little bit hard to follow if you're not paying attention.
At
least I found.
I think there's a few too many plot holes in it, to be honest. Overall, I really liked it.
Yeah,
because
so let's get into our overall thoughts. So you really enjoyed the movie?
I really enjoyed the movie. I thought it was some great animation. There was some CG in it, but I think it was done quite smoothly, to be honest. The coloring was great, and knowing that this is purely Russian made, you can see a lot of the Russian style of I guess drawing and the whole.
It's a co-production, so there's Japanese studio involvement. So this was done by Studio 4C, who has done like Mind Games and Memories and a bunch of other stuff. They're a pretty well-known studio. They've done lots of good shit.
Yeah.
They do mostly music videos and stuff, and I believe they've done tons of shit. But I enjoyed probably the first half of this. And then the second half, I was kind of losing interest.
The first half gave us a great introduction, I think. Gave us a great introduction to the character. It gave us a good idea of how the world worked around her in an alternate, Russian universe. And then I feel like they realized this is just going to be a movie, and they started rushing it a little bit.
Let's talk about one thing. So how historically accurate is this movie? Not counting the powers and shit like that.
It looks pretty historically accurate.
Because you know more about, obviously, this Russian time period. I don't know very much about Russian World War II.
It looks pretty historically accurate. I think a few things I might... a few things I'd have to kind of look back on, but I am not sure about the metro system that was introduced in there. So I'm not sure.
The train system, really. That's
the metro system. Okay. So there's a difference. The train system is what you usually see above ground.
Yeah.
Metro system. The metro system was there. Yeah. So the metro system, I'm a little iffy about. So I'd have to look back on that. But I don't think a proper metro system was introduced until way later after World War II.
I would be very interested because we had a very different viewing experience. Me and Eric, he watched it in Japanese with subtitles. And I watched it in Russian with subtitles.
Yes, because I couldn't find it in Russian with subtitles.
It's not an easy movie to find.
No, I found it just by random chance.
You found it as it dropped off the internet, as we say.
Oh, jeez.
Because I don't think it's legally streaming anywhere. Maybe on Anime Lab. I didn't check.
Let's not mention where it's actually legally streaming, because then we'd lose it. As we've discussed this with an earlier episode on Rasputin.
Really?
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah, as we've discussed it in an earlier episode during our review of let's see.
You mean you don't want to mention where it's illegally streaming, not legally streaming?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what you mean.
That's what I meant. Sorry. Yeah.
But no, I get what you mean. You don't want to mention the site because we might lose this movie. Although I think you liked it a lot more than me, if we're being honest here.
I liked it because it did have some historically accurate depictions of World War
Yeah,
Two.
I think the first half's really good, and I think maybe if I gave it like a second watch, I would enjoy it. It didn't help that I watched it like after 2 busy days of work.
It was
It's not a too busy day of work type movie to watch. You have to be in like a mood for it.
yeah. It was a good movie. It was a good first half, and it definitely gave us an interesting introduction to how magic worked in some way there.
This movie is, as I said, it's animated by a Japanese studio, and it is like it's got some Russian influence. There's a lot of Russian names in the credits, but there were 2 main writers for this, and since I don't speak Russian, I'm going to pass my notes to Eric, and Eric can read those 2 names for me.
Let's have a look. Written by Misha Spritz and Alhoisha Klimov.
Okay, I'm glad you said that and not me, because...
Oh, are you making me take the...
I'm making you do it because you're the Russian, and you could, pronounce these names better than I
Are
can.
you trying to make me take the heat for possibly pronouncing them?
Well, you'll get them right.
More or less.
I can't speak a lick of Russian, as Eric knows. Sorry, I'm just adjusting my seat. So yeah, I didn't necessarily love this movie, but I didn't necessarily hate it either.
The animation and the historical
I thought the visuals are really good, and I actually thought so there's a big thing of this. Obviously, Eric's mentioned it. The power to see stuff and all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like the melding of that was really good, especially the first time they introduce it, where she's like with a bunch of soldiers. They kind of like parade her around like she's like a what would you call it? Like a psychic. Like she's meant to be like a Taliban. She's like, so they're parading around her. They're like, she could do this. She can see your future. She can tell your name. And at first, I thought it was like a scam thing. When I saw it, I was thinking like, oh, these are like what do you call them? Like these are patsies. Like they've put people in the crowd to be like. People that'll say like, yeah, you totally know my name. I'm, Ivan Koff, whatever. But instead they like, she actually knew all this stuff. And then it's revealed like she takes off her headband because she's got this headband over it like to block her eyes. And she takes it off and she just sees everybody dead. And you're like, holy shit. Like, one, it shows you the ramifications of like how, the war's going to be and all that. And then 2, like, it's straight up, it shows the abilities. And I thought it was just a really good way of introducing it. And then, I don't know if it was in your version, but I got like a 60s style of James Bond, like, intro opening. Where, like, you see the characters and you see, like, the titles at the bottom and stuff, their names and...
You know the style of drawing in that opening? It's actually the same style of drawing used in propaganda posters.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like kind of like a propaganda, but...
I thought that was fantastic.
But I also thought it reminded me of, like, James Bond from, like, Russia with Love, or, one of those sort of old...
Really?
Yeah.
I was paying more attention to the great art style they introduced.
Yeah, they did have that propaganda look to them, though, definitely.
Yeah, I thought it was all great. I thought it all looked good. Especially since even the Russian wording introduced was like great.
Yeah, see, this is stuff you'll pick up on that I wouldn't even notice.
It's all really great. So I think my favorite part about this movie is just the opening.
Was there anything written in like the background that was that?
Yeah, I just said it was.
Could you read it though? Like, what was some of the stuff they said like in the background?
Some of it. It's already been translated for me, but
okay.
I can't remember what it all said. But yeah, I'm not a very fast reader, so I'd have to have paused each time just so I can read it.
But it was cool. There's now with there was some random twins that were introduced that I thought were almost fan service. Something they were just random like hot blonde twins.
Well, I mean, at first I thought
German. They're German, aren't they?
I thought there was Soviet propaganda.
It's almost what I thought, but then
but then they were reintroduced as German spies.
Yeah,
which isn't uncommon. It's pretty common.
Well, the manga we're going to get into has some of that as well. So defective and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. it is really interesting that.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say they're completely fan service. I'm
I
not
just
sure.
thought they were there to look pretty, fight, and that was about it.
Well, I mean, you
I
know,
would also like they had some cool moments, but some of their fights were like took me out a bit
mm,
because most of like the fights until they introduced some of the power fights, like a lot of them were very tactical and very much
yeah,
like army fights.
yeah.
And then like they introduced these power characters and they've got like these weird powers and it's like, okay, this is kind of cool, but it's like a weird X-Men fight. And then you introduce these twins and it's like they're out of a different anime.
Mhm.
Like it's like they
Yeah,
jumped out of like a shonen anime and
yeah.
yeah.
I think that's one of the downsides because I think the Japanese cast, who made this movie couldn't help themselves.
Yeah.
They had to do
What
something
what
like
was
that.
the acting like overall? Was it did you find it good? Did like
I found it okay. There were some tripped up moments, I think, with the main character.
okay.
Especially since I'm not sure when, but at some point the character did snap out of her amnesia phase.
What
But they didn't.
what I mean is the acting. Was the acting in the Japanese like very good? Like
It was good. Yeah, it was
did the
good.
flaps match? Because what I'm curious is like I'm wondering if they dubbed this in Russian first, then Japanese, then English.
Hmm.
Because Vampire Hunter D, no one people might not know this, but Vampire Hunter D was done by it's an anime. I'm talking about Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, the last one they did. Like the recent one, it's from the early 2000s, 90s, something like that. And that was dubbed into English before it was dubbed into Japanese,
Hmm.
which is very uncommon, as you know. And this show, like they like I thought maybe they've dubbed it into Russian first and then Japanese then English
I'm not
because
sure.
it really I was surprised at how well it fit. Like I watched it and I thought like, oh, I'm going to be taken out of this, and the only thing that took me out is like and this isn't that weird. Like they do this in English and Japanese as well, but it was kind of weird hearing Germans speak Russian.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I was like, well, if I'm watching this in Japanese,
Hmm.
they're probably speaking Japanese as well. And if I'm watching this in English, maybe they've got Russian, German accents, but they probably are just all speaking English.
Yeah, I can't really speak much for it. I think it fit pretty well.
Yeah,
In
I
terms
didn't have
of
any problems with the acting
yeah,
in Russian. It was actually kind of interesting. It had a different feel to it watching
mm,
it
yeah.
with like that language. And yeah, there was some good. The main girl I thought was really good. Whoever they got to do her Russian was really good. And there wasn't any. I've watched a couple shows where they've dubbed them into other languages. Like I think I've showed Eric a couple of clips of Hellsing in different languages,
Hmm.
and like one of the clips I showed him was from the French dub, and
Mm,
you could tell like they had done it in a different room. It didn't quite like the sound of the room didn't match
yeah,
up with
yeah,
the sound
yeah.
of the room in the scene. So there was no problems like that in the Russian dub of this. Like it was a proper professional like audio recording that they've actually done. So I was really happy with that. You could tell they actually put some effort in. So yeah, we've sort of I think we've just trailed into our pros and cons.
Hmm.
So as I said, like great main lead, the art's really good. The animation, which is done by 4C, is really good, and the fight scene at the end is pretty cool. But there's some weird X-Men shit. And then yeah, my cons like the samurai sword thing. Did that like piss you off a little bit? That it's just
I don't know what it was doing there, to be honest.
I felt like that's just like a marketing thing they do every time they do a co-production. They're like,
yeah.
these are Westerners. They want their character to have like we've got to add our Japanese flair. They've got to have a
It doesn't
samurai
make
sword.
any sense, especially since
Yeah.
the main villain of the series had a long sword, and it's not like not even a Japanese long
Yeah.
sword. It's a freaking Western European
I
long
would have
sword.
preferred if both of them just had other than the knight, of course.
Mm.
I would have preferred if she had like a bayonet or something.
Mm.
That would have made more sense. Like because it's the one thing that's
Or
like why does
actually,
she have a katana? Like it makes no fucking sense because there's no other Japanese like parts in the movie that I remember that they introduce.
I think it would have been great for her to have a cutlass type of sword.
Oh yeah, something like that.
This would have made more sense because
Yeah.
this is something the the horsemen, the horsemen in Russia used. I forgot their
Yeah.
names. It's like out of my head now. But this is one of the typical weapons they used. It is also typical weapon used by horse riders in World War One, but it would have fit in so much better.
So much better, yeah, yeah. This movie is like really surreal in a couple places, and like there's a lot of flashbacks and
It's
which I didn't mind, but it took me like a couple times. It slowed down the plot a little bit. That's why I thought this was like a little bit slow, and there wasn't quite enough action in a couple places.
Yeah, I think it's I think one of the more surreal things is the Netherworld itself.
Yeah.
I think
Sorry, what are your like big pros and cons to this?
my massive pro is the opening. The inclusion of the style of drawing and the style of writing from, the same stuff they use for propaganda posters. That was, I think, spot on. I thought the coloring was great. It was grayed out. It was almost had a somewhat depressing feel to it, which is something that reflects to the Russian feel.
I'd say the tone of the movie, like in that first half, just gets it.
Yeah, I think it does that brilliantly. The music was okay. I didn't pay too much attention to it.
I didn't notice it at all.
Me neither. I noticed some bits of it, which I thought, okay. I thought the acting in the Japanese on the Japanese side was okay. And the main character was pretty good. Although then that leads to my cons. The main character seems to be. There was one part of the main character where she snaps out of her amnesia, which I thought was a strange transition, but I have no idea how it happened.
Yeah.
Which leaves me to believe there's massive plot holes in this whole movie.
Yeah,
there's like massive plot holes in that. There's like massive plot holes.
I stopped paying attention after a while, so I couldn't tell you.
Actually, one other thing that's pissed me off is how the priest survived. So there's one Russian priest involved who's rescued the main character, and at some point he gets shot in the chest by those two Nazi spies.
Yeah,
and he survived by the bullet stopping by a book stopping a bullet, which I thought was like, oh come on, that is such bullshit. Then what else? I guess a pro-ish, con-ish thing is me trying to understand how the netherworld, or the underworld.
You paid so much more attention than I did.
how it
I almost felt like I fell asleep during parts of this movie. To be honest,
I was trying to like figure out how the netherworld or the underworld worked in this movie, and as Connor mentioned, it is a bit surreal, especially with them. Some of the characters leaving the netherworld. It's just weird. It's a strange.
When she goes to the movie theater and watches her own flashback. Was that in the Netherworld?
No, that's like in limbo, basically. That's like in limbo. Okay. But I think one of the other interesting things is that the part of the Netherworld they're in is only includes those who have died in battle. So you can see people still flying planes, which is awesome. You can see a guy bleeding trying to use an old radio to operate to say, stop firing, it's our own people, stop firing. And what is it? Some massive cameo of a a soldier during the American Civil War, who had a Southerner flag, waving around. He's just walking around.
The Confederates.
Confederates, so on. Which I thought was an interesting part of it. Like, this is the part of the Netherworld where every warrior who's ever died in battle goes to. But instead of having some kind of glorified end to them where they get to happily
they're just reliving their
they're continuously reliving their own misery. When you say
they're in hell, if they're just reliving their own deaths, that is kind of like what some versions of hell have been described
I would think that is a hell,
Yeah.
Instead of like the, for example,
what's like is this taken from any Russian mythology or religious concepts?
It has actually taken from a lot of concepts. But I think this is like a much more twisted version of, say, the Viking mythology, the Norse mythology, where warriors who hold weapons in their hands die in battle.
Yeah.
They go to
Valhalla.
And they, they stay with the gods there, and they
bang as many women as they like.
no,
Seems like
not even that
really?
one. That's the that's the more radical version of you know what. Yeah. So no, I think it's something of a much more twisted version of the Norse mythology, where instead of you dying as a warrior with a weapon in your hand and you go into the great palace of Odin's palace and you get to drink with all the gods, you end up repeatedly reliving the last moments of your life.
Well, that concept reminds me. I can't remember if this was we'll have to maybe review this at some point. But I think Dante's Inferno, when they go through wrath, I think the realm of wrath was kind of like that, where you relive like a violent moment or violent moments are acted upon you.
Yeah, that's right. Like Dante's Inferno.
Yeah.
So there's that concept, which I found interesting. Although the other interesting thing I found is that some of the companions they grabbed didn't actually exactly seem that miserable or.
Yeah. So the other big thing I'd have to get into, other than two characters and the Russian twins, I could not tell you any of the other characters in this whole movie.
Me neither.
I could tell you there's a blonde girl with a katana. There's her boyfriend, and there are two hot twins, and that's it. And I couldn't tell you a single other character.
Then there's General Bolva. There's the monk. There's the bunch of guys at the beginning.
I guess you paid more attention than I did as well.
There's the... I could list off a lot more because I don't know how
Can you remember, though, like, individual characteristics, things about them, things you liked, things you didn't? Because I can't, like...
only the main character.
I feel like the problem with this is, like, it doesn't really do a good job sometimes with
I think it focused more on the events rather than the characters.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Like, it's more about the setting and the time and the place than the actual character itself, which can be interesting, but...
Yeah. And without spoiling anything, this is really... pardon me. It's... it hits home how much they think more about the events and the characters at the very end of the movie. So watch this movie... You'll understand what we mean by the end of it.
Yeah, so would you recommend this?
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not.
Honestly, the expectations I had for this were high.
So I have maybe one sort of way to sum this up, and for me that would be this film is style over substance. It's got a very interesting style, very interesting look. It's doing a lot of interesting things. There's some interesting things in the story, but overall it's more style than it is substance. There's nothing. There's some deep stuff in there, but it's interesting. But it's interesting like in the same way that you're like, oh, that graphic and that title is really interesting. You could look into it more. Yeah. I might give this a second view at some point, and I'd be interested to see what you think of watching this in Russian. But I would probably, if this was a TV show, we probably wouldn't be watching more episodes, if I'm being honest. And I'm not going to recommend this to anyone.
I wouldn't recommend this either.
Yeah, so
it's not bad, but it's not exactly something I go back to watch again and again and again.
So let's get into the manga review now. And Eric, do you want to say the title? It's a really long title.
So the title of it is Shirayuri wa Ake no Somarani.
Do you want to give us the English title?
No, because I can't remember the English title. So
it's like the lilies or something.
Something like that.
White lilies over.
It's a very recent manga release. I think maybe early 2020, maybe late 2019, something like that. Okay. Yeah, it's only got 7 chapters out so far as I can see in English.
Yeah, that's not great.
So it's an incredibly short manga. But the reason I picked this is because it depicts a very real group that fought during World War II. Yeah. And this is the 587th.
So this is a real group that actually existed?
Yeah. The 587th and the 588th Regiment Air Force of the Soviet Union Army.
And it was a female division?
It was an entire female division nicknamed the Night Witches. All right? And this has got to be the most kick-ass group of women one of the most kick-ass group of women in history.
Yeah.
All right. So the synopsis, the background of this is that during World War II, there's an immediate shortage of men in all areas of society of Russian society because almost all of them had gone on to fight in the war. All right.
Yeah.
So to counteract this, the Russian government set up, propagandas. They set up, all these opportunities for women to join the workforce and the army. So you had the women working in factories making most of the armaments for the frontline
same
soldiers.
Thing in Germany as well, I believe.
Yeah, pretty much. The U.S. as well did it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they've also conscripted a lot of these women to go to the front lines. Now, not a lot of them, some, but not a lot of them were actually frontline soldiers. Most of them were combat engineers, field medics, logistics suppliers, and the rare few groups that actually took on the most dangerous tasks were the Night Witches.
Yeah.
Which was a all-female regiment group that basically flew behind enemy lines and bombed the living shit out of them. This was by far the most badass thing I've ever seen and heard about. So this manga actually revolves around this group. So it depicts, some real characters.
Wait, is the main character a real person?
I don't know, actually.
I've been trying to pronounce the main character for us?
No, I can't.
Nadia or Naya or
Nadia.
Nadia. Okay.
Nadia,
okay,
yeah.
I wanted to get
Nadia.
that right.
So actually, the only character I actually paid more attention to is Marina Raskova, who is an actual real character.
Oh, she's the like main leader and also like the figure of this.
Pretty much, group. And she's a real historical figure.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was the first ace pilot of the Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. She was also one of the first women to have been to have passed a diploma in the field that she's in.
Yeah.
Which is the Air Corps, so I think something like engineering. Mm-hmm. And she was one of the people who led the Night Witches to battle. Unfortunately, she died in 1942 or 43.
Oh, okay.
One of those 2 years.
I'm glad we got you to review this because I read this and I was liking it, but I was like, I don't know this. Is this right? Is this wrong? And I was thinking, Eric probably knows this.
Yeah. Which I thought I thought the manga itself was brilliant because it does have a lot of
Overall, I think we both very much enjoyed this.
It was great.
This was a big highlight for me this week, if I'm being honest.
It's a great manga. It does depict a lot of historical facts as real. It's got the methods in which the Soviet Union used to conscript women into the workforce and into their armies. It's included quite a few historical figures, and events that have happened. It's included characters who were real people, like Marina Raskova, who who led the Night Witches through. Well, it included a lot of even a lot of the, I don't want to say misogynistic, but a more negative view of women in the army or taking on any leading roles that men would.
I would also say, like, one thing that I really liked about it, and this is something I like with a lot of anime and manga that sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't do this, but I like when they do this. When they even when they have a concept or something that's like when they set something in a real setting that's like, a certain period, they try and make sure the characters are sometimes actually, like what they would be like in that time period. Like a good example of this is, and I know people won't like me mentioning the show because it's cancelled, but Rurouni Kenshin, Makoto Shisho was like one of my favorite villains because his motive and his ideals for his plan totally match up with what would be the ideals and the motives of the time period that the show's set in. Like that show's set in, I think, like the Edo period, and his motives were totally taking down, going back to what we used to be. Like his motives were like going back to the samurai ways, not letting not going to peaceful times. And this was something that was engraved in like some of the samurai minds, like in the time period. And with this manga that I really liked is the similar thing, where you've got Nadia, like she wants to be a pilot. She's influenced by like I don't know if you'd call it
She
the
was
propaganda, but like
yeah, no. Nadia was the propaganda was only part. It gave her an opportunity to basically exact revenge on the
but
Nazi.
the motives and like
Yeah.
the ideals and the way they speak, like it very much lines up with
Yeah,
what
yeah,
they
yeah.
would think for the time period. There's even like a bit of a I think there were even little hints of like the Ukraine and Russia sort of being uneven, like on not so great terms.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which I like was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. You know.
It's because it's because even early on the Ukrainian and Russian I guess that relationship wasn't exactly
No,
no, it wasn't the happiest of times.
no,
It didn't exactly
yeah,
help with later on years happening,
yeah,
and yeah, what's currently going on
yeah.
right now.
But I thought like that's in there, and then one of the ladies that's in there, like I just called her asshole, like lady because she wasn't very nice. I think you know who we're talking about.
Yep.
She's the one of like black hair that's also like a commander, and she literally like threatens someone with a gun. And
So this is one of the more hardcore. How do I put this?
commanders.
No, not a hardcore commander, but it is one of the more hardcore ideals of being a soldier
Yeah.
in the army. You can argue the commanders like her won't understand if they've never been on the front line.
Yeah.
But it is how things
I thought
should
that
be
is
done.
how like those people would be, especially some
That
of the
is
women
exactly
and
how
stuff.
those people were. She was basically reflecting what the Russian ideal was, even during, say,
Yeah.
famous battles like the Battle of Stalingrad, which was you retreat, I shoot you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No retreat, no surrender,
Yeah.
just keep going.
No time for your feelings. Nothing
Yeah, exactly.
like that.
And basically, in this case, though, I think it was a bit twisted because the commander didn't understand that some of these reports would have been real. And what made me a little confused about this is the men who went to patrol after the women came back from their first flight and their first fighting mission disregarded what those women said, and even the commander disregarded this. But then you see that these women are injured, their planes have been shot at, and there's 4 witnesses to attest that German fighters had actually patrolled the area and tried to shoot them down.
What's their status in terms of command? Like, are they? Because I think that was like, see that's where I think that's not she's in the right, but that's where I think like it made sense time period wise. Like, you're not in my position. You're not Stalin's.
So yeah, that's So I think in her case it would have been because there's a committee there, and kind of like an ethics committee.
Yeah.
It's what kind of stopped Nadia and the other girl from being executed.
But Eric, let's be serious here. Does Russia really have a very good ethics committee?
Absolutely not. And during World War II, it was rather twisted.
Yeah.
During World War II, the ethics committee was very, very twisted.
But I thought her personality and some of the personalities of the characters was very like they obviously have to be kind of like anime and manga characters, but like I thought there were little things just in the writing that very much reminded me, and like their actions reminded me of like European women I've met before. Like this reminded me, even though they deal with completely different subject matters and completely different things. Like the hierarchy reminded me of a movie I saw. I can't remember what it's called, but it's about a group of women in from Poland and areas like that. They were in a concentration camp, and it was a female barracks. It was completely run by females, and there was like maybe one man who was like in there, and like everything that took place in there and the relationships and things like that reminded me very much of like this same sort of dynamic and hierarchy. The only thing I would say that's not there that maybe they're not going to touch on because they're not trying to make it like a higher rating. They didn't touch on like how some of the women would maybe like use sex to not all women, just saying some of like the women would use it to
Yeah.
get in higher positions or like get extra food or things like that. Things like this did happen. Men did the same thing sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, it happened on both sides, but it was something that happened, and there was like, you know, there's obviously some like lesbian relationships and things like that. You know, obviously would have been very much frowned upon in Russia.
No, yeah.
But you know, it was something that kind of probably definitely happened, I would assume, especially with that time period, and you've been alone a lot and that sort of thing. You know, so there's elements of that definitely in there. But I just thought it was really interesting, just some of these concepts that were going on. But Eric, any thoughts on?
Prose bang is very close. Is very close to historical facts that have happened. You know, the existence of the night witches, the existence of these of the regiment numbers, the existence of even some of the characters who were real people. I guess the con bang is too short at the moment, but we can wait it out and read it as the chapters come out. And the other con I have is there's still a bit of mowiness, I guess, included in there.
So you didn't like the artwork? See, I thought this reminded me very much of, if you played the Fire Emblem games, it reminded me a bit of like that.
Yeah.
Or like Toshikan Senso, the Library Wars manga. Like it reminded me of like that sort of art style where, it's a bit moe-ish, but like, because when Eric sent me this and I read like the first chapter, I was sort of fine with it, but when I saw like some images just doing a quick Google search of what it was, I was like, oh fuck, because he recommended me to watch like Strike Witches or like Girl is und Panzer or something like that, because it almost, it does have that almost sort of moe look to it.
Yeah.
But when I got into it a bit more, like, I just took in the artwork, it was fine. I was like, okay, it's just a style they've chosen. Like, I don't know, like, it wasn't a problem for me, because I thought, like, one thing that did really well was the dog fights. Like, the action scenes were really well done. Yeah. I just think, like, and they probably wouldn't do this, but I'd be interested to read a manga that's the same thing. I don't mind the art, but maybe like if it was like a bit more realistic in some of the blood and some of the other like depictions of violence and sexuality and things like that. I mean, I don't mind like what it does. I still overall love the story, but I'd be interested to see like I don't know how that was actually depicted in some ways, because I do feel like there was times it was like that person would be bleeding out a lot more, or like. They would have to amputate that, or I felt like the first half of the manga is like really not disturbing, but really raw and really visceral about like what goes on in the war. Like we literally get introduced to 3 characters, Nadia and her 2 best friends, and then within minutes a bomb drops. Both of them are like she thinks are dead, and her mother, like she goes to save her and she's with her. And then, like, I think a house collapses and another bomb drops or something, or catches on fire. And literally, like, the other half of her torso is just gone. And I was like, holy shit. And there wasn't really too many other moments like that afterwards. Like, I was still interested, but I was like, this has gotten, like... I'm sure there were, like, some really downtime, sort of boring moments, like, in between.
Yeah.
But I was like, I don't know, I guess war movies have expected me to see, like... to be kind of hard to watch, have some really visceral moments. And after a while, there just wasn't as many of those sort of moments. Yeah. I'd also say, like, I mean, I guess, like, there was that one German guy that gets shredded up in the plane propellers, but, like, I don't know, the biggest con I have is, like, the German soldiers they introduce could not give a shit about them because they don't really get enough screen time. They're introduced... We're supposed to instantly like them because one of her friends, spoiler alert, is actually still alive and defects to the Germans. And we don't really get... I
am actually rather interested about what exactly he did.
See, he's an interesting character, but do you give a shit about any of the other German soldiers in his group?
They're blank. They're a blank in my head, to be honest.
I did not care. Like, one of the characters died, his name was Connie. And I was like, okay, he's got a... his name's Connie. And then
Which doesn't sound like a German name,
and and he didn't sound like a German name. And I kept on thinking, like, is that a nickname for Ivan? And then it's like, no,
Not even that's a
character.
common German name.
Well, he's the Russian detective. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I just thought it was weird because they introduced this character named Connie, I think earlier on, but I didn't even like register him until like they introduce him. He's like trying to be brave or something, and then he gets killed in propellers.
Mm-hmm.
Like I cared more about one of the other female characters. Called Raina or Rena or something.
She's the one that got shot in the arm.
Well, no. There's another character that's Reina or something. She's got like kind of orange hair.
Yeah.
And she has like a mental breakdown because like the only interesting part about Connie getting killed is like this character. Spoiler alert! I should have said this ages ago. Connie dies. Like he gets strapped up in the plane propellers. And she basically has like a mental breakdown, like, and she's about to like crash her plane, and then she has to parachute out, and like that whole moment, you totally get like that. That's the moments that I wanted more, like the visceral, like real, like what felt like war moments that like real serious. You got exactly what she was going through, and like you got her character, and I like those moments, and I wanted more of those moments versus like. It's cool that they showed the German side of things, but they really like. I didn't. Some of the characters is like, your character B who has blonde hair, and your character C that has blonde hair, and also I have to point this out. Not that many Germans actually had blonde hair. Like
no,
because that was kind of the ironic and funny part about Hitler wanting everybody to have blonde hair and blue eyes.
Yeah, so like Hitler's idea of the perfect Aryan was white, blonde hair, blue eyes. And whereas he himself was short and
brown
had
hair.
black hair
and green eyes, and he have like green eyes.
I thought he had brown eyes.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
Either way,
actually, that's
either way.
That's
he should have invaded Sweden.
That's the same for almost all of his friends in the Nazi party. Like most of them didn't have blonde hair. And as you just mentioned, if you wanted a perfect Aryan,
should have invaded Sweden.
Yeah, and he grabbed those. Did what the Vikings did.
Maybe he was just like, nah, they're too tall.
No, not even that.
They're taller than me. They cannot be taller than me.
I think if we're going to go into a general in-depth of that, then in this case, we would think Hitler wasn't trying to find the perfect Aryan. He was actually just trying to purge all else, and then the perfect Aryan can come soon after.
You never know. I mean, we could totally slam Hitler. No one's going to get angry at us. He could have just been in the closet. Maybe, like, that's his perfect man. Who knows? Like,
Yeah, there's probably...
apparently he did very well with the ladies. And I'm not saying that, like, as Hitler's a cool dude or anything. Like, there is actually documented evidence that he had, like, either Braun and then all these other ladies... But any man who's got like a lot of power is bound to get people, and getting the ladies when you've got that much power isn't like he's not getting like the hot good ladies. He's getting a lot of broken people or people that are just like, oh, he's got a lot of money. I'll screw him and I'll like take all his money, and then I'll use it to help people or help my family or But beside the point, I'm starting to ramble here a bit. But generally, I really enjoyed this manga, and I would 100% recommend this. And I 100% am going to read more of this. I want to see more of the female characters and less of the German characters.
You'll definitely enjoy this since you'll see more of the pilots.
I've read all that's out.
Yeah. So you'll see more. Yeah, you'll see more of the pilots included. If you do want to, you can definitely find the list of the original pilots of the 587th and 588th Regiment that have fought, died, and possibly survived as well. There were survivors, but you'll see them. You can even see some pictures of them. And I gotta tell you, they all look pretty kick-ass, and they don't even have to try. But some of the interesting. Yeah, some of the interesting parts as well is that they actually also flew. This is the other great part. They flew some of the more advanced warplanes in the Soviet military. So they flew the Yak ones, which were their version.
So my only plane of evidence is Spitfire. That's the only plane I can think of, like off the top of my head.
Of course you would. You bloody UK.
Yeah.
Get blasted. Can't even remember some of the more famous German
So you
fighters.
said like the Yakos, and is there like
Just the Yak one.
Yak? Okay.
Yak one. So these are the ones that have flown. There is some there are some comments about them having flown old World War One biplanes as well, which was not common. Even the UK still used biplanes, World War One biplanes during World War Two. But that's still impressive, having to fly planes from decades before.
Yeah.
That have probably been put into storage, then taken out because they needed more warplanes, and it's like, okay, that's impressive. Some of these people have balls.
World War II was actually very like innovative for a lot of technology. Like the whole radio and audio industry actually kind of owes their debt to the Nazis a little bit.
Yeah,
like
actually,
a lot of technology from that came from stealing from Nazi tech, and Russia probably a lot of their like planes. And...
I can tell you that a lot of the great powers and even a lot of the medium powers actually didn't just steal, but they also They also housed Nazis, scientists, engineers, and all that to take the technology. A lot of the technology we have nowadays is thanks to them. So places like America, Russia, the UK. Most of Europe, just these places, they all gain their knowledge and their, technological marvels from a lot of Nazi origins. Which is not to say that it's we encourage Nazism here.
And
we
on
just,
that note, no, we won't.
We just it is actually quite. It's quite important to point out where some of these origins are.
We here at Alternating Eric do not engage. Don't encourage the views of Nazi propaganda.
No, but it is...
Or Soviet Union.
It is important to understand where this technology come from, because it is always a misconception to think that, places like America would have invented everything. Yeah. Well, that's not exactly the case. They invented some things.
What happened is America had had some spies in Russia and some other places, and then invaded some of those places, and then just took all that tech. And they did similar things when they had inventors come from other places, like... For instance, I'm going to put out a big fact, and some people are going to call me out and say, no, that's not fucking true, and you're being, anti-American or whatever. But technically, the light bulb was not invented, but fully by Thomas Edison.
Yeah.
Jonathan Swan is technically the first one to make a concept for the light bulb, which he then was going to make a pennant with Thomas Edison around the same time. Thomas Edison basically said fuck off and took the whole bloody...
Yeah, Thomas Edison, the more I learned about it, the more I realized Thomas Edison almost invented nothing, and he was just a crook of a businessman.
He just took a lot of people other ideas.
Yeah.
And then, the one person who did do a lot of things for us is Nikola Tesla.
Nikola Tesla was a goddamn genius.
Has done so much shit if you look at what he's invented, and has got so little credit over the years. It's great that he's now getting a lot of credit. But he's the god in terms of inventors and who we should be praising. And he's not American, but he became an American
No, he's not.
Citizen, I guess, after a while. I think he was technically an illegal immigrant coming into that country. He smuggled in. And that's probably how, I would assume Thomas Edison and people like that were able to take advantage of him. Because in his later years, he was not doing great. But overall, me and Eric would both recommend this manga. It is fantastic. And on that note, we have been alternating with Eric, episode 26.